Hi, my name is Declan, and I'm going to be going through my top 10 favorite horror movies as part of the Spooky Astronauts Discord tag. Uh, I don't think I could rank any of these movies one over the other. I could never pick a favorite horror movie. It would just take too long. So we're just going to go through them alphabetically, and we're going to start with Audition from 1999. Audition is Takashi Miike at his finest. It's violent and gross and uncomfortable, but it does it in such a pointed and intentional way, and that's what makes it one of the best of the disturbing or torture genre of movies, because it's not just a torture movie, even though I don't know if you can even say that it is substantially different on the surface. It just feels different to watch, which is really incredible. Next is The Babadook from 2014. What I love about The Babadook is that it changed the way that I look at grief and approach grief in my own life, which is incredible that a horror movie can do that to someone. I have nothing but good things to say about The Babadook. Also, absolutely terrifying. Uh, on the topic of absolutely terrifying, next is The Descent from 2005. I think it's a modern classic. Every single aspect of it, from its premise to its setting to the creatures, all absolutely terrifying. But the character interplay is what really makes it stand out. Even if it kind of follows the structure of a slasher, you're not rooting for the characters to die like you are in Friday the 13th. You're invested emotionally, and that's what's great about it. Next is Hereditary from 2018. I mean, what is there to be said about Hereditary that hasn't been said 1,000 times? It's incredible, it's terrifying, really it has a lot to say, which I like about it. But I think the best thing I can say about Hereditary is that it is the only movie that actually got me to out loud scream in the theater with the ending scene with the piano wire. That actually got me to scream. Next is Martyrs from 2008. What I love about Martyrs is, well, for one, it is incredibly profound and thought provoking. It's something that can really be applied to a lot of different things, even beyond what the director is directly commenting on with it, which is really the mark of a good piece of literature. And what makes it impressive is that, unlike a lot of super violent movies like other New French Extreme movies or something like the later Saw movies or even Hostel, is that the violence in Martyrs never becomes fantastical. It's always very present and very real and very personal. And so people will say that it's one of the most violent movies ever made. I don't know that that's technically true, just because there are movies with way more gore, way more blood and guts and awful things, but Martyrs always feels real. It feels like it is directly happening in front of you rather than being in some sort of fantasy world. Next is Misery from 1990. Kathy Bates' performance in it is absolutely iconic, and people don't even realize that how often Misery is referenced, even just in little things, until you're going back and watching it for the 40th time, and then you are like, oh, hey, I remember that being in like 4 different TV shows later on. On the topic of King adaptations is The Mist from 2007. The ending is what makes it. It's what King wouldn't dare to do, and I think actually that Emma's That Scene video on the Mist ending was the first video of hers that I ever watched, so how about that? Next is A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. It's a classic, tried and true. It what I think makes A Nightmare on Elm Street work is that it manages to blend the camp and horror seamlessly. Compared, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is definitely also a very, very good slasher film, but there's not as much of a sense of fun or camp to it. While Sleepaway Camp, another movie that I dearly, dearly love, is also, it's just all camp. There's not really any horror to it. A Nightmare on Elm Street finds that perfect middle ground where you're having a great time, but you're still pretty freaked out. And ultimately, it's the charisma of Freddy Krueger that makes A Nightmare on Elm Street so timeless. You can't help but watch Freddy Krueger go and slash up some teenagers. It's great. Next is The Ring from 2002. The Ring is definitely, I might argue, the most influential horror movie of the 21st century. It laid the blueprint for what psychological horror would look like coming forward and what supernatural horror would look like going forward. But what The Ring does best, better than a lot of its imitators moving on, is The Ring doesn't continually give you new information or new stuff. It's not like, oh, things happening, things happening, things happening that you would see in something like Insidious. The Ring, it gives you a thing, here's the videotape, here's the well, here's the horse scene. And then it just kind of prods at it for a while, just turns it over for you, so you have to keep looking at it and keep thinking about it. And I really think that approach works in its favor. Last is Us from 2019. I would say I liked Us better than Get Out. It was definitely more ambitious. I don't know that Us succeeded in everything that it set out to do just through the constraint of its runtime. But I think that Us manages to be universal. I can imagine a world where the points raised by Get Out are no longer topically relevant. I can imagine a world where we move past the fetishization of Black bodies and Black people, and where cultural appropriation is not an issue. But with Us, I don't know if I can imagine a world where Us is not poignant. Which I think that is important to its favor. It also helps that Us is absolutely bone-chillingly terrifying. It really hits you right in the gut, every single scene. And that is my top 10.